righty. I think we're going well now. Hey guys, how is everybody tonight? It's beautiful Tuesday night. Yeah, it is Tuesday. That's the main thing. Thanks for jumping on, guys. So we're just waiting on a few more people to jump in, and then we're going to get started. So, but welcome tonight. We've got a few more than usual coming through tonight, actually. So exciting. No, good stuff. This is one I'm really excited about. It's something I'm very passionate about when it comes to meeting clients and getting them to a stage of income replacement, whether it's partial, whether it's full. So this is something I really like to address with everybody. So guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. I've got a bit of a PowerPoint presentation. I do go back and forth to my whiteboard, changing cameras, etc. So if you're new here, jump in, hang on, and hopefully we can get enough answers for you to for you guys to take away. Yeah, so I'm just going to share my screen, guys, at the moment. Bear with me here. Oh, here we go, straight up. It's working, perfect. So guys, this is our workshop tonight. We're going to talk about income replacement, how I calculate it, how it comes together. So, but there's a few bits and pieces we have to do, guys, as we go through. So what I'm going to do, open my chat box here. All right, so the first thing, all right, next month's workshop, of course. We do this once a month. We normally do this on a Tuesday night. Now, unfortunately for me, I suppose not unfortunate for me, the Tuesday next month is my wedding anniversary. I should go home at some point and deal with that, but so I've pushed it to the Wednesday night just for next week. So hopefully it doesn't make too much of a difference for anyone on that scenario. Yeah, but family does have to come first at some point. All right, so the next thing is we've got this chat box, guys. So throughout the webinar we're doing, or workshop, whatever you want to call it tonight, if you have any questions, there's two parts. There's a Q&A button at the bottom and a chat box. So it's up to you guys, but I always like to know where everyone's coming from. So if you want to put in the chat, for you, those of you who are on at the present time, whereabouts are you coming from in relation to whereabouts do you live? And yeah, just say hi, I guess, see if it all works for you. As we go through. So that's the chat box. And then, of course, if you've got questions, sorry, that's a chat box there. If you've got questions, we do have time at different times throughout the next hour where I do answer questions. There's no stupid questions, so I do like questions. So any questions you have, please jump on and ask away. So, all right. So now, I always like to go through this, guys, in relation to why you're watching this tonight. Now, obviously, anyone watching this is interested either in income replacement or property investment. You might just want to just try and figure out how to put together some sort of passive income stream for yourself. And then, of course, very often, though, there's a couple of new names here. I actually don't know who they are. So hello to these guys, participants. And with these ones, hang on 2 secs, guys. Just let me check. Yeah, so if you're new here tonight, you may have been referred by a friend or family member, even accountant, mortgage broker, planner, whatever it might be. So this might be just trying to figure out whether or not you want to meet up with us as well. So all good. I'm just glad you're watching. I like sharing the love. Okay, so in today's workshop, I'm going to talk through, obviously, for the newcomers that are here tonight, and apologies if you've already heard this a little bit before, but I'm going to introduce who I am. It's going to talk about understanding how to calculate your income replacement. Talk about, obviously, there's different twists and turns in life that you may not be aware of, and that can change things for you. And of course, I'm going to break down a real member case study. Now, this is a little bit different. They're a Rentvester, been a client of mine for 15 years. They decided to Rentvest and live in an area where they want to have the lifestyle for themselves and their kids, but also build a portfolio of several properties. So I want to break down how they're going after 15 years compared to owning your home. You'll be quite surprised how they're going, to be honest with you. Yeah, crack along from there. So one thing, though, is in the chat, Jess is going to whack in a little link. So if you are new here tonight and you do want to have a catch-up call with myself or Jess over the next couple of weeks, feel free to click that link for a 15-minute catch-up call, and I can always jump on and see what you're needing. But of course, tonight's more about information and sharing knowledge for yourselves too. So feel free to jump on that. And of course, probably the most important thing, I do these workshops. I do what I do personally and for my clients purely because I like to see everyone grow financially. And it's not necessarily, initially, it may not be growing financially on paper. It could be just growing financially in your mindset so that you gain more knowledge so you know what you want to do in life. That's important as well. But the most important thing, guys, this is general information, so it may not be for you. Your circumstances could be different. So please take that into consideration when you soak in the information I'm going to share tonight. All righty, guys. So let's get started, I guess. All right. So just 2 minutes on myself, just so those new guys and girls know who I am. I'm a professional property investor myself, a buyer's agent, and I'm the founder of The Property Bloke. I bought and sold or held more than 50 properties for myself, and as many as 2,000 plus for my clients over the past 24 years. And I've been involved with over $300 million worth of property transactions. So to get that in a nutshell, I've got a lot of experience with what I do. Like, obviously it's not the whole property market, but in my sector, I feel like I've got a lot under going on. So my accreditation, so I'm a qualified property investment advisor. I have my diploma in financial planning, diploma in real estate, and diploma in mortgage planning. I'm licensed in every state as well, except for the Northern Territory. And of course, I'm a justice of the peace. So if you need a sticky letter, let me know. I can sign off on that. Sorry, guys, I'm actually freezing in this room here. I'm trying to turn this aircon off. Eventually figured it out. All right, so I'd like you to know what my accreditations are. I'm not just falling off the back of a truck. So throughout the night, I may talk about data partners. Now, some people get confused about what data partners are. They're an information source we use to gather information to assess areas, not just necessarily for pricing, but it also could be for tenancy and also for cash flow. So as far as rent yields, etc. go. For example, we use Hotspotting by Terry Ryder. That's the one there at the bottom. We use a lot of their information. Of course, we use realestate.com.au. You got CoreLogic's a big one as well. And of course, all the government websites can sometimes get a fair bit of information too as well. So it's always important. You've got to have all the right subscriptions to get the right information. But let's get cracking about tonight, guys. Let's talk about calculating your income replacement. Okay, so now when we're calculating an income replacement, we have to look at a few different factors. A lot of people think, looking at their scenario today, that's what they've got to calculate the income replacement off. They calculate it off their gross income, not net income. So, and there's different parts of your regular budget or expenses or cash flow that you need to look at, because some of them may not be there forever. So when I'm looking at that, I look at your potential debts that may need to be paid out. I look at ongoing expenses that might end. So that could be school fees. The most common two I see is school fees and child support. And then, of course, you've got your pre-retirement income calculation. So that is prior to having access to your super, if that's what you want to do. And then, of course, you've got post-retirement. So if you wanted to include your super, you can also work it out there too. And probably the biggest thing is, once we're done, I've got 3 separate scenarios I want to quickly walk you through. I'm going to pick one of them and just show you how I put together a bit of a acquisition plan from a property purchasing perspective. And that basically works out a bit of an asset base needed to reach your income goal. So let me get started on this one, guys. So I'm going to go through these quick 3 scenarios, and then I'm going to expand with a separate screen with a spreadsheet. All right. So scenario 1, and now these are actual clients too, guys. I think it's best when I pull actual real data. It is a bit, the numbers are rounded up slightly, but I pulled actual data because it's real. I just would prefer to have that. So we've got Kevin and Sarah. These guys are new clients for me. They're in their late 30s. They've got strong household income. They've still got a mortgage of $350, which realistically is quite small in the current market. 2 annoying kids, of course. Kids are expensive. Limited savings, good super, but they have no investments whatsoever outside of super. Scenario 2, we've got Jake and Nicole. They're also new clients. Now, these guys are a bit younger as well. They're probably our most common age bracket is between 35 and 50. But these guys are in their late 20s, so they want to get started a little bit earlier. They do have a bit of a higher mortgage there at $450, a little bit on the limited savings side, obviously low super because of their age, and they have no investments either. And then, of course, I've got this one here. We've got Michael and Karen. They have been clients of mine for 5 years. These guys are in their early 40s. They have good household income. They've got a mortgage of only $200, which is good. 2 kids, teenagers, good offset savings we've been able to put together, and good super. And these guys have 3 investment properties. So the best way to explain what we're going to do now is I'm just going to change screens, guys. Bear with me. I'm going to pull up my old spreadsheet. I love spreadsheets. So I hope you guys can see this okay, because on my screen it looks a bit on the small side. So I'm hoping it looks okay. So what I'm going to do first, guys, is go through scenario 1 with you. So what I mean by that is I'm going to break down with you guys how I put this together for these guys. So these are new clients. These clients have only been with me probably like 3 to 4 weeks in total. So they're quite new. So, but let's look at this income calculator. Now, just remember, if you have questions, don't wait till later. Put them in the chat or in the question and answer box. I might not answer it straight away, but I'll come back to it. So I just don't want you to forget your question is the main thing. All right, so this is what I call an income replacement calculator. Obviously, I built this calculator. It's quite a simple calculator, but it makes sense when you're breaking it down. Okay, guys. So with Sarah and Kevin, now just remember, these guys were in their late 30s and they've got good household income, which makes a difference when you're trying to borrow money as well. But so, for example, Sarah here, she's currently on 85 grand a year. Kevin's on 215 grand a year. They've got, this is their tax they take out, and this is what we call your net income. Now, when you're looking at income replacement, I don't look at this column. That's not what I look at. I look at this figure here. We've got to replace $204,000 net income. Now, with these guys, that's not actually what I call your net income. So what I call your net income of income replacement is you've got 204 grand. They've got home loan repayments of about 31.5 grand, and they have private school fees of around 5,000 a year. So they've got these two expenses. Now, as you can see here down the left-hand side, there's a number of expenses we can put in there if you have them. But at the end of the day, these guys are quite good with cash flow. So if you've got a car loan or a personal loan or you're paying child support, that's all good. You've got to start somewhere. So we just whack them in there. So what I'm trying to say is their net income after tax is 204, less these repayments of 36,500 a year. What their real net income is here is 168,000. So that's the figure that they're living off every day. So you've got to imagine, obviously, for most people, they won't say they've got income replacement until one, they've paid their house off. Most people want to pay their home off. So that mortgage repayment will be gone. And of course, depending on the age of your kids, your private school fees are probably going to end at some point too. So if you're looking at retiring in your 50s or 60s, that's one thing that those two things probably won't be there. So we have to work off, okay, you're used to living off $168,000 on a net basis. That's what we really need to replace. So when you look at that, you've got, when I divide that by 2, now you look at the top here, you've got Sarah, she's on 85, Kevin's the higher income earner in this household at 215. But when you have investments, it makes sense to split it 50-50 when it comes from an income perspective, because the tax is the same. So see here at the top, you've got Sarah's on 17 grand tax, Kevin's on 77 grand tax. So it's really outweighed towards Kevin. So what we want to do is when you're looking at investing, when you're looking at passive income and income coming in, you want to try and split that long-term across 50-50 ownership so that the tax is similar. So it gives you the same net income anyway, but you're probably going to pay less tax overall. If you weight it all into one person's name, they're going to push up on the tax scales and end up paying whatever, 48 cents, 45 cents on the dollar. So we want to make sure that we get down to this net figure of 84. That's what we need to live off. But realistically, to get to that $84,000 net, we need to add back what tax you'll pay, which gets us to 110 or 220 at the end of the day. So at the moment, they've got household income of basically 300 in round numbers. But once they've paid their debts off, they could live off $220,000. All right. So that's what we need. So we need 220 grand of a gross income. Now, that's the income calculator. So that's what we need. That's what we know we need from an income from our investments, right? To live the same lifestyle you're living today. If you're happy to reduce your lifestyle, that's fine. If you want to increase your lifestyle, you will need more. So, but I'm just going to work off same lifestyle. You know, you got your holiday once a year. You might want to buy a new car every 5 years, all that sort of normal mum and dad style lifestyle stuff. So now what do we need? We have 220 grand income for the rest of your life too, remember. So we don't want to really take capital out of it. And we want to make sure we have assets that grow in value as well, because we've got to keep up with inflation. That's a bit of a killer. So if you want to go conservative, now I mean conservative on the basis of hands-off style investments. So hands-off investments where you sit back and just take the money are normally what we call lower return investments. But what I work it off, you'll see here, I work off 5% return. So if you can't invest for a 5% return or more, you need to seek advice. So a 5% net return from expenses is not hard to find, whether it's property, shares, business, whatever you want to do. Now, it doesn't have to be property, remember, guys. I'm just showing you how to do this. I use property, obviously. You would hope so, with me being the property bloke. But 5% return. So just so you know, with a couple of my investments, I get about a 12% return. So my return on investment's a lot higher, but I'm very active. So if you want to be a passive investor, so sit back and relax, work off 5%. So if you need that, you need an asset base, so an owned asset base of $4.4 million. So that's a lot of money, isn't it? That's a lot of money you've got to put in place. And that's why I get frustrated when people don't do anything, when they don't take the risk, whether it's investments or shares or whatever it is. You've got to take action. You can't rely on your super and you can't rely on the government. So $4.4 million in assets owned outright is what you're going to need to bring in $220,000 a year with a 5% return on investment. Now, then we look at, okay, that's what we need. That's the net income we need to go after. But what assets have we got? And this is where this next part of what I do is where people get a little bit blown away that they are not in as good a position as what they think, because they look at their home as an asset where it's not an asset. Your home is not an asset. And the debt against your home is not good debt. Debt against your home for an owner-occupied purposes is bad debt. You need to get rid of it to keep growing and build your asset base. So that brings us over here, right? So if you see here, I've got, these guys are from Brisbane. They've got their home's worth about 1.5, which is great. That's great. But if they want to retire, they can't sell a bedroom off, can they? So that asset is great, but it's not an investment asset. And then they've got a 350 grand mortgage, which is a liability. So the downside to having a home mortgage is, see here, I've got non-assessable assets and assessable assets. Oh shit, hang on. Sorry about that. And assessable assets. So from a home perspective, that's not an assessable asset, unless there is one scenario where it can work. Say, for example, you're lucky enough to live in a CBD suburb, and say, for example, your home's worth $3 or $4 million, and you know, come later in life, when your kids don't need to go to that private school, or you don't need to be where that infrastructure is, you may be able to go to outer suburbs and take, I wouldn't call downsize, the house might be the same size, but you're able to lower the value of the home. So if you say your home's worth $5 million, and you can go buy a $2 million property outside of where you live and still be happy, that is $3 million worth of asset, tax-free, you can play with, and you would put that in that assessable asset here. So when I see clients that are going to downsize or move home to get a cheaper home to lower everything as far as debt goes, I do split that asset. I would put $2 million in a non-assessable asset and $3 million in the assessable asset column, because their whole plan is to downsize at some point. Okay, so they've got a 350 liability. Now, these guys are going quite good. Only having a 350 grand mortgage is actually good. They've got no personal debt, no car loan, no credit card, nothing like that. And they have $80,000 in what we call cash. Cash would be across these, normally, these three separate things. They can be outright savings in like a bonus saver account. They could be in an offset account next to their mortgage, or they could just have it in advanced payments or redraw on their home loan. So, but that's classed as cash, because that 350 liability is what I would call the limit they can draw back to. So if they have 80 grand in redraw, they might only owe on paper 270, but they can always pull back that 80K to that 350. So I work off the top figure. But a bit of a shock for these guys was, on paper, they're actually, from a pre-retirement age assessable asset base, they're in a negative position. So because all they've got is the liability and no real assets apart from their savings. So 350 less your 80, it gives you into a negative 270,000 position, which actually puts them into a negative income position if they wanted to retire before retirement age. But these guys are only in their late 30s, so it's not a big deal. We've got plenty of time to make things happen, which we are putting together a bit of a plan for those guys as we speak. And then we've got post-retirement. So post-retirement is after the age of 65. And of course, that is predominantly super. So with Sarah and Kevin, Sarah's got 115 grand in Australian super and Kevin's got 210 grand in Mind Super. So what you do is you've got that 325, but you do have to take this negative 270 off that on today's circumstances. Obviously, that's going to change in the next 15, 20, 25 years. But realistically, at the moment, all they really have is around about 55 grand is what I call in asset value at age, if nothing changed between now and 67, which isn't real good, but that's what they call me for, is to build out that asset base to make that look better. So that income's pretty poor, not going to do much for an annual percentage. So that's not going to work out too well for those guys. But of course, they called me, let's get started with those guys. But I'm going to come back to these guys. I'm going to come back to this scenario with Kevin and Sarah and just show you what an acquisition plan style structure I'm going to put in place for these guys. So that they can fix that issue they've got. Now we've got client 2. So with this scenario 2, it's Jake and Nicole. They're their late 20s. Now, these guys are starting early. I love it. The earlier you start, the bigger your outcomes, the better your outcomes. I started at 18, never regret that ever. That is, starting at 18 in property has been the best choice I've ever made in life. It is a bit harder to start at 18 today, but in your early 20s, there's no excuses, to be honest with you. You should be hooking into that, especially if you're living with mum and dad. So these guys are late 20s, good household income, got a home mortgage of 450. As I said, that's a bit higher than the other guys. Limited savings, low super, obviously, because of their age, and they don't have any investments either at this point. So I'll go through this a bit quicker, obviously, this time. With Nicole and Jake, 65 for Nicole, 170 for Jake. And I'm sorry, guys, I'm not being sexist here. This is just the last couple of clients I've had. I do get it in reverse, where the female is higher income earner than the male. So with that in scenario, we've got $168,000 of net income after tax. Now, these guys' home loan repayments are around 37.5 grand, and Jake does pay child support from a previous relationship of around 6,000 a year. So take $43,500 off, their net income is $124,000. Now, what you've got to realize, if you can live comfortably on a lower income, your income is easier to replace. That is, people think bigger income, better. It's not always the way, because if you live off the whole lot, you have big issues. You need to not live off all your money if you can avoid it. So net income's 125, say. From when we add back the tax to a gross perspective, sorry guys, the reason this is in yellow anyway is just to remind me when I do my calculators, that's not an automated cell. I have to manually work that out. So 78 grand each. So if you remember, Sarah and Kevin needed 220 grand, where Nicole and Jake, if they could continue to survive off this money, 156 is all they need. Now, just keep in mind, as you get older, so these guys are in their late 20s, as you get older, what I see on a regular basis, you may do more study, you may get different jobs, better opportunities, whatever it might be. I normally see incomes increase. So if you're sitting at home today, you're in your early 20s, and say, for example, you're only on 80 grand a year, don't stress, it gets better as you get older. All I can suggest is two things. One is you can get a second job, obviously, that's always out there, or you can study to get a better career as well, or change of career even. Doesn't matter how old you are, you can change your career whenever you want. We live in Australia, we can do whatever we want here. But with these guys, we need $3.1 million to retire on the money they are on today. Now, with these guys, I was quite realistic with these guys. I said to these guys, I've got a feeling you're going to need more than that to retire, because realistically, your probably incomes are going to go up, your lifestyle's going to increase. But I do try and educate people that as your income increases, try not to filter it all into your lifestyle. Try and say if your income goes up, say 5 grand in a year on a net basis, you might want to say add 2.5 grand to your lifestyle and 2.5 grand towards some sort of budget structure, whether it's off your home loan, whether it's a savings plan or whatever. That is something I see that goes wrong in probably 90% of households in Australia. They just eat up all the lifestyle money. Okay, so that's what we need. And then from here, these guys live in Maitland. Their home's worth about $950 and they owe about $450. So they've got a high mortgage compared to asset value. They're what we call a loan to value ratio of almost 50%. So they're up there, which is all good. It's all part of growing. They've only got about 25 grand in savings. So they have to invest a little bit conservative because they don't have as much savings as, say, the first client. But when you look at that, of course, they're in a negative position of 425. Now, at the age of 20s, of course, that's going to be common. If you're in your 20s and you've got a positive figure here, you're doing really well. I very rarely would see someone in their 20s with a positive figure. So, but if you do, that's awesome. Don't think that's a bad thing, because if you're in a negative position, that's quite standard. Don't stress about it. I just like to make people aware of it. And I'm not putting these negative positions in there to scare you. I just want to know that you've got work to do. That's all. That you've got some work to do. With Nicole and Jake, obviously they've got low super at the moment because they're only young. They haven't had that going in as often. So on a big picture basis, they're actually negative at retirement age, but being in their early 20s, they've got 40 years left before retirement age. So that's going to fix itself over the next 40 years, of course. But I just like to show that to them for the process. But that's a younger person. So being a younger person, that's just life. You're normally in the red a little bit when you're looking at the big forecasted picture. All right. Scenario 3, guys. This is the last scenario for these. We've got Michael and Karen. They're early 40s. They've been a client of mine for 5 years. So you're going to see the difference here. They've got strong household income. They've got a home mortgage of 200, 2 kids, good offset savings, good super, and 3 investment properties. So when you look at these guys, this is where the difference lies, guys, where people have actually taken action. This is probably the biggest thing I like to show people is these guys have actually taken action to make a difference. So Karen's on 105, Michael's on 240. We've got 23.5 grand in tax, 88 grand tax. So we've got 232 of what we call net income. Now, probably the biggest thing I could have added in here for these guys are pretty good savers. So they don't need all this net income, but I'm just left it here to show you guys. But if they wanted to live off that net income, they need 215 grand, which works out to be 256 gross and an asset base of $5 million. All right. So you've got to remember too, an asset base of $5 million in today's money is not that much really. I know it sounds a lot of money. If we had $5 million, we'd be killing it, but it's not that much. With what we see with growth of portfolios, etc., we've seen portfolios grow 300-400 grand a year, if not more, in the high peak markets too. So these guys are doing really good. Now, when I first met these guys, obviously they had no investments, and over the last 5 years, they put together a couple of investments really quickly, and then we've also put a recent super fund purchase involved as well. So they've got their home, a non-assessable asset here at 2.45. Now they're not looking at sizing down; they're looking at staying there, which is good. Because they've only got a loan of 200, which is not bad at all. Now, 5 years ago, these guys basically bought these 2 properties straight away. They bought 2 at once. They knew they had to make a decision. And since then, obviously they bought them back in 2019 pre-COVID. So they got a bit of good COVID tax on the increase there. They've got a 500 grand mortgage, which that's property's value is around 780. And they've got a nice dual income property here. They got a debt of 595, and that's worth about 835 at the moment. So they've also got savings actually of 250 as well. So they've got an asset base of 1.865, and they've got debt of 1.295, which gives them what we call a net asset base. This is the pre-retirement net asset base of $570,000. Now, when I met these guys, they were in the red. They were negative. But since then, we've been able to get them into the positive over the last 5 years, and it's working out really good. This is just setting a simple foundation so far with these guys. And to be honest with you, with Karen and Michael, they're just about to go next level with their portfolio as well. So really start to push it. Now that they've seen it, how it comes together, seen how we work, clients of 5 years, that's worked out really well. So then down the bottom here, you'll see here, their super is all broken up. So we've got Karen, they're both with Mercer. They got 65,000 for Karen, 42,000 for Michael. Now, the reason why they still have these funds open and they have a self-managed super fund, something I always like to touch base on, is they have life insurance in their super funds, their Mercer. So you don't shut that down. You need your life insurance. So they've got that much money in their super. They've got a property value of around 840, which they owe debt on 395. That's a self-managed super fund property. We're seeing probably, I would say 35 to 40% of our clients have property in super now. And of course, they've got $25,000 in their cash management account in their super fund as well. So overall, they've got $972,000 there of assets. And of course, 395 debt. So from a super fund perspective, they're actually in a good asset position of 577 grand. And between their super and their pre-retirement money, they're looking at about a $1.1 million retirement basis. Now, these guys are early 40s. These guys still have 20 years to retirement. But if they wanted to work to retirement, they're going to have a ridiculous amount of income coming in, more than enough to what they can live off by the time that comes around. But at the moment, if they were to work off that 5% return or 1.1 million, they're at about a $57,000 retirement income so far, where really what we want to do is get to 256. They're currently at 57, but over the next 20 years, even if they did nothing else, they would get pretty close. They would get pretty close just through the asset value rising, more super contributions from their employer. If they did nothing else, they'd get pretty close. But with Karen and Michael, they want to potentially retire early. So they're going to get a little bit more aggressive now. They know how property works. They're all the scary stuff out of their mind now. Debt's not an issue. They're comfortable with debt. Some people are more debt focused. Other people are not. So if you're a very debt focused person, you sort of need to get over that. You need to move past that. It's not going to work for you long term. So, all right, guys. So that's how I work out income replacement for everybody. That's how I do it. This may not suit you. That's fine. I really don't care. But for me, this is how I work it out. It's a basic sums of how it can come together. Now, what I'm going to do, guys, is I just want to come back to here again. Bear with me. We've got Karen, not Karen, getting me K's mixed up here. Kevin and Sarah, if you remember, those guys had this scenario. These are new clients. They've got a 350 mortgage. They've got 80 in offset, but they've got no investments yet. And what those guys, what I've currently sort of working with these guys on an acquisition plan as such, I needed to draw out a big picture acquisition plan for these guys to show them what they can do. And then it's up to them how they want to put it together over what time frame. All right. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. Here we go. And I'm going to change my camera, guys, to my lovely whiteboard. I do love my whiteboard. Hang on a sec. Just trying to figure out what one to use here. All righty. So, guys, I've got all my figures behind the screen here. Although I'm not that good to remember them all, to be honest with you. But if you remember, it was the scenario one. And our income big goal was 220 grand is where we wanted to get to for these guys. All right. So the main thing with these guys, if you remember, on their home over here, they had a 350K mortgage, which we need to consider in the whole thing. And what we want to do with these guys is basically, I want to show you how I'm going to get 220 grand income for these guys. It's over a couple of different stages, but we've got to be realistic, right? So the first thing I was planning on doing was putting what we call a dual income property in place. So when we say dual income, it's like a dual key, duplexy style thing, if you're not familiar. Now, with those properties, I've got to work out. So what we've got to work out is, okay, we need to build a portfolio. That's great, but we've got to be really considerate of the income we need to be able to work. So on a dual income property, you've got to look at, I know there's going to be debt against this, right? But what you're going to look at is income on this property is, say, $55,000 a year. That's how much rent this receives. Now, it's going to have fixed expenses. That's rates, insurance, property management fees, all that sort of stuff. On these sort of properties, probably going to cost you $7 grand. So on paper, these guys have got $48,000. So if you own this property outright, you'll have 48 grand a year coming in for the rest of your life, if not more, as it grows with inflation. That's a dual income property, right? Now, forget about the debt in this scenario. I'm just showing you how we put together an acquisition plan. Because when we pay this off, we've got $48,000. So next to this property, now this, if you follow me on a regular basis, you will know our generic planning is dual income, which is cash positive, and potentially like a house or something similar, what we call a growth property, which sometimes is cash negative. But I'm not going to worry about how much income that's coming in. I'm going to label this a growth property, and I'll show you that in a minute why. Then the next one, of course, is another dual income property. Similar scenario, 55,000 coming in, 7,000 worth of expenses. So you got $48,000 here worth of what we call net income once we own the property outright. And of course, we then put together another growth asset next to that. So they work with each other. So these work with each other, right? When it comes to with this acquisition plan, the biggest thing you got to know is, like, obviously, I'd love these guys to go 1, 2, 3, yeah, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, bang, bang, bang. Doesn't happen like that realistically. You might build one of these, or could get a delay. You might have a kid that slows your things down. Different things happen in life, right? So, but just so we put these 4 properties together, this is what we call, big word for me here, is foundation, okay? Because when I sat with these guys, I said, realistically, I've had clients for over 20 years. I've got a couple that are retired just off passive income. They're going really, really well. It just depends on life's decisions and things that happen through life that can slow you down. But with this one here, I said to the guys, this is a 10 to 15 year time frame. 10 to 15 years. 10 years if all goes fantastic and we can get quite assertive. 15 years if they get a few hiccups along the way. It can be sickness, can be whatever. You just don't know. They might have an inheritance. That happens. They might win lotto or whatever. That might not happen, but if it did, so that will impact by having cash injections, which will make it quicker. But there's also negative things that happen in life sometimes, which slow you down for a year or two as well. So you got to be realistic. So with this simple plan, what we would work off is, okay, once these growth properties rose in enough value, so once you had enough equity in this property to pay down the debt on this property, we sell this property off, and pay down the debt. So what we have is then we have this $48,000 a year coming in for yourselves, right? Now, if you remember, we will need to get to 220, 10 to 15 year time frame. This is what we've done so far. Set the foundation, clear debt, but we've only got 96 grand, remember, guys. This is all we've got so far. We've got $96,000 of income coming in. Now, depends on what they learned through these stages, because obviously they're at property 1, or what I call chapter 1 of their investment journey. They may not want to be as aggressive, or they might want to get more aggressive. But at the end of the day, we get rid of these 2 assets, pay these assets off. We've got 96 grand coming in. What we can do past that, and this is what I call past that, once you get to this stage here, what we talk about is you go from, say, a beginner, intermediate investor to more of a professional style advanced investor. And what you might do is you might put things like, I might just do it down here actually. And again, if you do follow me, you will know what I'm talking about here. You might put together a HMO property, which is a house of multiple occupant, or it could be a rooming house, whatever it might be. You might put 2 of them together down here, see? And these are higher cash flow assets as well. And from a net income perspective, these things generate 100 grand a year, maybe a bit more from a gross perspective. But from a net perspective, you can get anywhere from 70 to 80, but let's be realistic. Let's just say, oh, that's right, yeah. We do 70 to 80K each from a net perspective if you own these outright as well, all right? So 48, 48, 70, 70, or 80, 80, whatever it might be. We've used these growth properties here to pay these 2 debts down. How we pay these off, there's all different strategies we can use. And depending on our timing and I would say your risk profile is the best way we would work that out. But realistically, that's step 1. We sit down, see how you feel. Actually, realistically, that's step 1. That'll be step 2, just making sure all my clients are comfortable. Then we can put together what we call high cash flow assets. That could be HMO. This could be just a commercial shop, could be a servo, whatever. It's just a high income asset. That's all it is. So if we say roll these over here, lucky, just say we've got 70 each out of these. We've got 70 and 70. That gives us 236,000, right? That's not hard to do, even though for you guys who are not investing yet, this is not difficult to do over 15 years. 15 years is a long time. And if you do it right and just keep, you got to push a bit hard. Like you can't just sit back, spend all your money expecting your properties to do their own thing. You've got to be a little bit focused and respect money. That's the biggest thing. Respect the income, respect the net asset you've got. You can get to this income replacement here within 10 to 15 years, probably more closer to the 15-year end, of course. And even if they took these guys, if you remember, these were in their late 30s. So if these guys took 20 years, they're still in their late 50s. So they're still retiring early. Or even if they took 30 years to do this, they're retiring very, very, very comfortably at 65 or 67. And if you look at all this, I haven't included any superannuation at all, because I'm going to be straight up with you. I love super, like it's great. It's good that it's there, but I don't rely on it and I don't trust the government, because they can push that 67-year age back further if they feel like it, just because they want to do it. So, and us as Australians can't do anything about it. So I don't work off, I do like to work with super. So I do like to make sure your super is working good for you if you did want to buy a property, but everything I do is normally pre-retirement accessibility. Unless you're obviously in the age bracket of 50 plus, then we'll probably bring super into it for that one. But that's how I do an acquisition plan. And just so you know, it's a long-term, medium-term plan. This is not overnight success. All right, guys. It's not hard work. It's just putting in the right properties in place in the right areas to get that growth you want. All right. So I'm just going to change my screen back for you. Here we go. Onto it. All righty. So let me share my screen. So that's how I do income replacement. I hope that makes sense, guys. It's quite basic, to be honest with you. It's not that difficult to do, but we need to be realistic with what you can. Oh, shit. No. With what you can and can't do. So going back to my presentation here, that's Karen and Michael. So, oh, I've done that. Sorry. Just did that then. So does anyone have any questions at this point, Jesso? So I might just, I did see a couple of questions in there. That's all.
Yeah, we did have a few come through, which is awesome. We love questions.
I love questions. I do love questions. Yeah.
So the first one is, what time frame would you suggest people could replace their income in?
Oh, that's a really hard question. Sorry, whoever asked that one. That is a question of, like, it depends how aggressive you want to be. So say, for example, you don't want to contribute much money. Obviously it's going to take you longer.
Yeah.
It depends how you want to be. So say, for example, when I get a foundation set, like I mentioned there with those first 4 properties, after that, if you want to be aggressive with advanced investing, I sort of say 5 years is a good strategy after that. But that foundation can take a good 5 to 8 years to put together first as well. So, and it also comes down to, I suppose, where you're starting from. Do you own your home already? Do you have a high mortgage? You have a low income, so you can't borrow money. But realistically, a 10 to 15 year time frame is a good time frame to work with. And income replacement, the biggest thing I mentioned with income replacement is people fall into the trap. Like I mentioned before, they get pay rises and they just, after 12 months, they don't see the pay rise. It's all into their lifestyle because they feel like they deserve it, which is the worst thing you can do. But I see it a lot. Most people feel the same way. So a good 10 to 15 year time frame I like to work off from scratch. But say, for example, I've got clients at the moment where I met them maybe, what are we now? Probably 4 years ago. They might have had a property or 2 potentially, and they own their home with cash in the bank and working well towards income replacement. So an income replacement compounds, guys. It's when you have that passive income coming in, like I mentioned up here on the board. It might be 20 grand a year, 30 grand a year passive income coming in. You can use that towards building your portfolio and a lot quicker without any more money out of your own pocket. So, which is what I do personally. So I can't really answer that question directly. Such a variable, but yeah, I hope that was all right. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. We just had another one come through. Someone's said, I'm over 50. How does it work for me?
Depends on your asset base, but if you're over 50 at the moment, you need to be a little bit more assertive potentially, and you need to bring super into it too. So if you're over 50, we'd look at your asset base you're currently starting with and work out a bit of a plan. But the most thing is, if you've got what we call a low risk profile to start off with, you're going to be quite conservative. But I need to fill your brain with knowledge, and I need to show you how it all comes together as quick as I can, so you can be a lot more aggressive with your portfolio if you are over 50. But it depends. Can I ask this with that question there, Jess? Can they just say maybe, I've got a question back, I guess. Do you own your home outright as a start being over 50, or do you have debt on that? Say answer it. Sorry, guys.
That's okay. We haven't got anything back through yet. So
that's right. I can come back to that worst case.
Yeah, we can always circle back. Oh, no, hang on. Doesn't own his home, no.
Okay. So it could be, we have to look at your asset base where you start. And yeah, you may have to do what we call, with some clients, what we do is we pick, we may have to do manufactured equity style properties. That could be like a duplex where you buy one, you split the titles and on sell. We might have to do things a bit quicker. They are a little bit of a higher risk to do that, but it can get you benefits quicker, if that makes sense. So you can take gains, pay down that home debt, which could be slowing you down from adding properties. So we've got to focus on what's stopping you. So if it's your mindset stopping you, we've got to focus on your mindset. If it's your home loan stopping you, we've got to focus on how we're going to get rid of that as quick as we can. Definitely. Yeah, we've got to just pinpoint what is, I wouldn't say pain point, but pinpoint the block of what's stopping you. And most times it's knowledge and risk, but sometimes it could be divorce that's put you in a bit of a home debt too, so that you didn't want. So yeah, but we just work through it. Yeah.
Awesome. What if I don't want to buy that many properties? How else can I replace my income?
A bit similar to what I just mentioned. It'll take a bit longer. So some people are a bit too debt focused and they just can't sleep at night, which is fine. Everyone's got their own personalities. But with that, we might do, say, 2 properties, wait till we get a bit of growth out of those 2, sell one down, pay down a bit of debt to get a bit of passive income coming in early, which will give you more confidence to add more property because you're not solely reliant on your own personal income to put your portfolio together. I hope that makes sense. Sorry, guys. I'm better with whiteboards.
What if the market doesn't grow in value and this doesn't work?
Yeah, I get that question every day.
I was going to say that's pretty common.
Like, we've got to be honest there. That's not going to happen. If the markets don't grow in value, that means everyone's market doesn't grow in value. And we live in Australia where that doesn't happen. The biggest thing there I've got to really mention is having more than one asset in your portfolio is important. Because if you've got one asset, that market may not work. So when you're buying a second asset, if you put it in a totally different marketplace, one of them is going to perform well. And what we normally see, like obviously you have your 7 to 8% growth is your pinnacle or your basis you want to work off as a minimum over a period of 10 years. So some markets could get more, some could get a bit less. But you just want to make sure you average across your whole portfolio. That's why I do talk about multiple properties. And when I say multiple, it might only be 2, could be 3, it doesn't have to be 10. That in different marketplaces will stop that from happening. But I do see people buy one property, have it for 5 years, doesn't go great, they sell it and never do it again. But what I don't like about that is they do that. They get that property, it doesn't work, they sell it, they say they hate property, yet every Tom, Dick and Harry who's doing it different is making money but them. So to me, it's a bit of ignorance personally. Sorry, I get a bit
definitely
passionate.
Makes sense. I think it's diversity, I think, is a big thing for those people.
Is that a woke thing, Jess?
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I hope I didn't offend anybody. Anyway.
And we've had another one, which we also have had from other people before, is can you share your spreadsheet with us?
Yes, no dramas. If you want to copy that spreadsheet, it's a very basic spreadsheet, just so you know. But I'm more than happy to share it, save you guys making it, no dramas at all.
Yeah,
And
just
you can
shoot us an
change it, do it. It's
email.
not locked at all. I share my life, I share everything. So yeah, I'm more than happy. If you want that, just send us an email tomorrow, or tonight if you want. We won't answer it tonight, but you can send it anyway. And I can flick it back. It's just a basic spreadsheet though, guys. There's no what do you call it? Magic number in there. It's just basic stuff. It helps you work it out. You can play with it. Yeah, no drama whatsoever.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. All right. And that was the last question that we had. So
all right, no, too easy. All right. All righty. All right. All right. So let's get down this member portfolio breakdown. I'm actually keen to show you this one. This one's worked really well. All right. So this is a little bit different, guys. So everything I show you guys on a regular basis has someone with a home and a mortgage, but I have rent vesting clients. And I had a young guy in here last week, and he actually asked, he wants to rent vest, and he asked if I had an actual video breaking down rent vesting, which I didn't have. But it made me think I need to share Heather and Glenn's story about rent vesting. So with Heather and Glenn, I met these guys 15 years ago. They're only young at 28, of course. Now they're 43, a bit of an old school now. But the whole focus for those guys, they lived in the city, they worked in the city, and they didn't want to commute, but they still wanted to invest. But these guys actually don't believe in owning their own home. Now, there's two sides to a story here. I get it. Not owning your own home, you don't have the maintenance, you don't have your rates, you got less insurance, you do have less security in a way, but if you're a rent vestor, you're fully aware of that. So I wouldn't say I'm jealous sometimes, but there are times I'm jealous of my clients that do rent vest because they live exactly where they want to live from a full lifestyle infrastructured position where, say, for example, these guys live in Elizabeth Bay. So with these guys here, they live in a beautiful suburb right near the beaches, right in the city. They both work in the city. They love where they live. And honestly, when I go, occasionally I'll drop in and see these guys. They've been clients forever. And I love where they live. I'm not going to lie, but could I live there? I've got too much crap. I'll be honest. They live in an apartment. I can live in an apartment, but I have too much stuff. That's the reason why I can't. I need garages and blah, blah, blah. So they wanted to live in the city. And of course, for them to buy in the city at 28 years of age, the affordability was not there. So they went, we're going to rent vest, we're going to stay here. If life changes, we might buy our own home later, more regionally, or we just keep investing. The main thing is, guys, these guys invested, these guys made differences. And even though they rented, they put a lot more money towards their portfolio. So instead of paying a high mortgage, when I first met these guys, I think their rent was maybe $500 a week, where now it's $1,200 a week. But when they first started doing it, they were still putting a lot of money aside and paying down debt. They weren't just blowing all their money. And one other thing, guys, they did, and this is something that you've got to realize too, living in the city, they only had one car. 2 cars, households are expensive. A second car can be a lot of money. They don't do any kilometers. Their car lasts 10 years. Not like, say, some other people that might do, 40,000 Ks a year. They've got to trade cars every 3 or 4 years. These guys just have one car that they don't really use too often. So it's awesome. But yeah, so let me just break down this scenario for you, because the best thing with this, now they don't own their home outright, but their portfolio pays their rent. That's what I wanted to explain to you guys. All right, big one here. So this one's a bit of a 2-stage process, but bear with me. I'm going to change my account. With these guys, biggest thing you have to know, they're rent vestors. And the amount of rent they pay at this point in time is $1,200 a week, which for you guys, for a lot of people, sounds like a lot of money. That's 60 grand a year. But their portfolio pays it for them. So that's a win-win. So let's break this down for you. Now this, I could lose you, but bear with me. So they bought so what they did was they basically bought 5 properties, right? Bear with me, guys. I'm going to draw all this out. Be nice if someone drew this out for me first, but I don't have that luxury. All right, they bought 5 properties off that we sourced for these guys. Now, the first property was a house, and they bought that in 2009. So that's a fair while ago. That's 2009. They were cheap. These guys paid $350,000 I struggle to get land for that now. They bought that back in 2009. Now, the next thing they did, they went out and bought a dual income property. When they first started becoming quite common, actually, in 2012, they bought a dual income property. They paid $520,000 for it. And then, of course, in 2016, again, because they were rent vesting, guys, you've got to remember too, their equity grew a little bit slower because they didn't have the house equity to use. So they started a little bit slower, but it compounded quite quick for these guys. $545K they paid for that one, but that was another dual income because they've seen the value with dual income with the cash positive of it, the whole thing. And then we did, I had another house here in 2018. And this was when it started to go really good for these guys. Sorry, I'm mucking up my board here. House 2018, which they paid, what did they pay? $480 for that. $80K for that. Then they did another house in 2019. All right. Now, these guys did have a bit of a stumbling, though. They didn't all go to plan. I'm going to explain that to you in a second. $525K. So if everyone remembers what happened around 2019, the big bastard come in, COVID hit. And these guys lived in the city, in Sydney, at least, not Melbourne. Melbourne would have been worse. So when COVID hit, these guys panicked, I'll be honest. They had 5 properties. You know, the government was talking about the September cliff and all that bullshit. And I had to mediate with these guys and really hold their hand through COVID in the early stages before the market started to take off like it did. And I said to these guys, because what happened was their rent started to go up a little bit. And they're like, shit, we've made a bad decision here. But at this point here, they had a fair bit of equity across the board. So once I broke it down for them, that's my job, is to what we call a financial cuddle. Once we break it down for them, they were fine. I said, just sit and hold. If the market did dip, it's Australia, it's going to come back. If COVID was the end of the world, who cares about debt at the end of the day? But obviously COVID went past, everything started to go great guns again. And their property portfolio accelerated ridiculous because they held 5 assets through that COVID period where the market took off and went nuts. All right. So what we did, though, is after COVID, to a certain degree, we did a massive of what we call recycling equity, restructure. And we did a big plan over a couple of years as well. So the first thing we did is we sold this first property off in 2022. And we sold it for $870K, all right? But by that stage, they'd paid this one off because remember, they're rent vesting. They got to pay debt. You got to pay debt down. They only owed 150 grand on that one by the end of it when we sold it. We kept this dual income property for now, kept that dual income property. We sold this one here, this house, because if you remember, the houses I really pushed towards as what we call a growth property because these are higher cash flow assets. We sold that for $820,000. That's okay. They didn't pay much off that one. This one here, they sold in 2023 as well. Now, when I say 2023, they're 2 separate financial years. You never sell the same property if you can avoid it. The same financial year, $780,000. And they only paid $525. They got good uplift pretty quick on that one. But again, that was that COVID tax increase that we had. So you've got to be in it to win it, guys. Biggest thing I say is don't complain that you miss out. If you're not in it to win it, you've got to take the good with the bad. Most times there's more good than bad. So we sold all these off. Now I'm going to break that down for you. Property 1 here, we cleared, right? So obviously in that money there, we've got $720,000, but what they got left with after taxes was $600K. So we got rid of that one, all right? Kept that. This one here had debt of, they'd paid this one down to $280,000. And this one here, we still had the debt of $545. This one here, when we sold that one off, we ended up with $250,000 profit when we sold that one out. Is that right? Yeah, that's right. $250,000 on that one. That's after capital gains as well. And then with property number 3, same scenario. When we sold that off, we got $190K out of that one there as well, profit after capital gains as well. You've got to be realistic with capital gains. When the client sold those 3 properties off, we were able to have net money of $1 million. Okay. Now, when I talked to you before about income replacement, I worked off 5% returns, and I told you that's the minimum you should be getting to. So these guys are getting higher than that, so we're good. With that $1,040,000, sorry, we owe 280 and we owe this figure here, right? So we've got to take that off. So when we take that off, we've got a negative 825 grand to get rid of this debt and to get rid of this debt. So we had no debt left at all. And then it left us, we still had cash left over as well of $215,000, okay? So just remember, we had 5, I'm going to rub this off, sorry guys. We had 5 properties, we sold 3. This is 15 years, and starting with renting, investing, so not your own home as well. So let's get that down. This is what we got left over here. So what we were left with, sorry guys, I'm going to redraw this up because they went to the next level after that, which we're currently doing. Oh. That looks all right. Okay, so they had left 2 dual income properties. They held them. Obviously, selling dual income properties is good sometimes, but sometimes it's good to hold them as well. Depends on your scenario. With these assets, with them being owned outright, you know how I talked about they've got gross income, less your fixed expenses is your net income. This one over here had $45,000 income coming in. And this one here had $42,000 coming in. So between the two of these, that's $87,000 a year, right, of rent, what we call passive. What that was? $87,000 a year. That's what they were at after rejigging. It took a good 2 years to put that together, just a bit over 2 years to put all that together. They paid off the debt, owned outright, renting $1,200 a week, rent passive income coming in. Now, from that, we've got to take off $60,000 per annum. Why do I do that? Because that's their rent. That's that figure there, 60 grand a year. We take off that passive income, less the 60, they're actually left with $27,000 per annum passive income, which, to be honest with you, in your early 40s, that's pretty good going anyway. And I haven't even talked about super. That's totally separate. They have not bought a super fund property. They're focused outside super, which is all good. I'm fine with that. But they also had 215 grand in an offset. But the main thing here, they own these properties outright. They own these assets outright. So when you're looking at that position, they've got equity, tons of equity these guys have. So what we're doing, at the moment, they're currently building a duplex for $1.25 million with no money down. They're using their equity from here. With this property here, their whole plan on completion is to sell this one, pay any profits off this one, and have, so basically 1.25, they're going to get around 800 for this. This one's going to be worth about 800, and they're probably going to owe about 550 over here. So they've got 250 grand of equity in this property over here. It's only half the duplex. I'm not sure if you can tell by my drawings. They're going to sell one, keep one, 250 grand equity. They didn't put any cash of their own money in there. They manufactured that equity. That's the biggest word I can say there. Once you get to a certain level of investment, you can manufacture your equity. Got 250 on that. And then what they've done is they're halfway through construction here, and we've just purchased what we call a HMO property. So if you guys know what that is, that's a rooming house style property, 6 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, renting out the rooms, etc. They have high income. So with that one there, we're going to have 215,000 of their cash over here in an offset account. After all said and done, at the moment, we're working off approximately, this one's going to have passive income of 35,000 a year. We add that to here, 35,000. So that's $62,000 passive income here between these two properties, those two properties, after paying the rent. Does that make sense? So we've paid the rent, we've still got 62 after these two assets. But like I said to you, by the time this is finished, it's probably going to be 16 and a half years of being my client, not just 15, probably 16 and a half years before that's finished. But that's what they're going to be at before they turn 45. All right. So that's for me, that's very it's a great outcome, awesome outcome. That's right there. Now, the only thing I should mention is this property here is probably going to be negative $5,000 from a cash flow percentage. Let's be honest. So you might take $5,000 off that to cover any shortfall for this one, $100 a week. But they've got $250,000 equity, so it's all good. But that's roughly how that one come together for those rent festers. So rent festing is just as good as owning your own home, but as I mentioned in that previous whiteboard, you've got to be a little bit more assertive in the early days as far as adding your own money to get going. But if you're only renting, you have surplus money. And if anything, the way the banks work now, renting is actually gives you more borrowing capacity too than owning your own home and having a mortgage, to be honest. So I hope that all makes sense to you guys. But that was a good RentVest outcome for those guys too. But guys, that's how that one come together for us though anyway. So Jess, any questions on that one?
Yes, we have a couple of questions. So this person's just asked, it looks like they contribute a lot of money to pay down debt. Doesn't that defeat the purpose of not having a mortgage?
No. If you've got a mortgage, your sole focus is paying off that mortgage. So like any one of my clients, they do get to a point of owning outright. The biggest thing I suggest is you need to start paying down investment debt, or at least setting up an offset account, which in a way is paying down debt by still having accessible to the money. But no, definitely not. These guys, I'm very proud of what they've done. They've done quite well in relation to, and like everything, if you want to live off every dollar you spend, you're not going to get ahead financially as quick as the other guy who might be a little bit more frugal. I'm not saying tight ass. I'm not saying like living off bread and butter every day. It's about just maybe thinking about before you spend all your money.
Yeah, no, exactly. And there was just one other question that's just come through. I hear you say a lot, or this must be someone that listens to you, don't pay down your investment debt. How does that fit in this scenario?
Don't pay down investment debt. How does that fit in this scenario? They needed to keep growing. So they needed to pay down because they didn't own their own home. They needed to build equity into those first couple of properties to keep growing along. That's like, don't get me wrong, this is a RentVest. It's totally different to what we normally talk about. But yeah, like they had to pay down that investment debt to keep going realistically, because they needed that equity to keep buying more property. I'm not if you remember off the whiteboard there, out of the 5 properties, they're only paying down debt of 2. The other 3 they weren't paying down. So those first 2 they were paying down debt because we needed that equity to keep building.
To create.
But the last 3 we didn't pay any debt off that at all.
No, that makes sense.
And if anything, sorry, just to interrupt, when I talk about paying down debt, it's not principal and interest payments. Most times it's an interest-only loan using an offset account or interest-only loan paying extra. A lot of people think when you have an interest-only loan, where the loan doesn't come down, you just pay the same amount, that you can't pay extra. Well, you actually can. You just the interest-only structure is just more an investment choice to keep your payments lower. But if you have extra cash, pay down the debt. But I do prefer everyone with investment properties, if you don't need to use the equity anyway, is to use offset accounts, guys. Use offset accounts, definitely.
No, that makes sense. No, that was all we had for that one.
Cool. All right. I think we nearly finished, guys, for those listening. I hope you're still awake. That'd be nice. Bear with me here. So that's Heather and Glenn. I think we're just about done, guys. I think. Hang on. Oh, I just did that. Sorry. Done questions. Sorry, guys. Yeah, so like I mentioned, everything we do here, everything's different for everyone. You've really got to make sure you have the right goals in mind and be prepared to invest within your risk profile. But if you need help, we can help you out. Thanks again for watching, guys. There is that 15-minute link in the chat box. So if you do want to have a bit of a chat with us, just let us know, book a link. Obviously, if we shut this down tonight and you miss the link and you want to have a chat later, well, I don't know, how do you get a hold of us? We've got phone numbers, we've got messages on Facebook, you've got
messages on Facebook,
emails, you've got, I think you can do a smoke signal now still, something like that. We can just reach out to us and we can get in contact and book in a call. But guys, really appreciate today. Next month's workshop, I don't know the subject yet. Sorry, guys, I've been a bit busy this week. I haven't thought of a subject for next month, but it's a Wednesday, not Tuesday. But you'll get all the annoying emails and Facebook posts about that. And yeah, cool bananas. All right, thanks, guys. Thanks for watching tonight. And I look forward to chatting to you again next time. if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and happy to help out anyone. I like seeing people get ahead. All right, guys. Thanks again. Have a good night.
See ya.
See ya. Bye.